It's basically I'm completely deaf. Like that's how I put it. I cannot hear anything. So I wear a Kanso 2 cochlear implant. It looks a little like this. So I wear a watch that vibrates. It's an alarm vibrator.
Suppose someone is saying something and you are not able to hear or comprehend.
Speaking for me now at this age, I would just ask them to repeat themselves. I would be like, I didn't quite catch that. Can you repeat yourself? Or like, what?
What kind of advice would you like to give to the parents?
I've met maybe over 100 families at this point.
Hello and welcome to the series of podcast Through the Enabled Eye. This is a special series of podcasts where we are going to empower and educate the families of special need children. When I say special need children, we are going to educate these families so that they help in removing the word dis and focus more on ability. And to do that, we'll begin with our first episode where we have a very special guest, Miss Ananya, who actually gave meaning to my life and because of whom I am here today doing this series of podcasts. To introduce myself, my name is Ritu Nakra and I am a listening and spoken language specialist, certified auditory verbal therapist. This is a specialized field where we work with young children with hearing loss and help them develop spoken language just like you and me. So I welcome Ananya Nakra. Hi Ananya.
Hi,
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling good and very honored. Thank you for having me on this series of episodes in this podcast. I'm sure you're going to do great work and help a lot of people with this. So I'm honored to be part of the first episode.
Thank you for being the inaugural guest
Yeah.
speaker on the series of this podcast. And as I said, we are going to have a fun conversation between mother and daughter.
Yeah.
Where we share our journey and we talk about how we together went through this.
Yeah.
So, you were born with severe to profound hearing loss
Yeah.
in both the ears.
Both the years.
So, which means profound hearing loss means something more than 80 decibels
Yes.
in both the ears. So, you can't hear anything softer than 80 decibels.
No, I cannot hear, it's basically I'm completely deaf. Like, that's how I put it. I cannot hear anything.
But you speak so well. So, can you tell our audience that how are you hearing
Right.
and what is the secret?
No secret, just technology. So I wear a Kanso 2 cochlear implant. It looks a little like this. It's a small device. And just a second.
Sure.
I wear it on my right ear because I'm unilateral hearing impaired. So, which means that even though I'm deaf from both my ears, I only hear from one ear. I have a cochlear implant only on one side of my ear. So, I use the Kanso 2, and that's how I hear and speak, basically.
So, which means you can't hear from the other side.
No, I have no implant on the other side. I don't wear any hearing aids on the other side. So, my left ear is mostly for show at this point.
So, do you find it difficult to cope in various situations? Can you tell us? Do you think it is good?
I think that being unilateral hearing impaired is not exactly convenient. If you're deaf from the other side, then I would definitely say being bilateral cochlear implanted is the way to go because then, you have a cochlear implant on both sides. But I'm unilateral in the sense that even though I'm deaf on both sides, I only hear from one side. So being unilateral hearing impaired does have a lot of disadvantages. I can't localize sounds from my left side at all because I'm completely deaf. So if anything is going from my left side, I cannot hear it. So I have had to train myself from a very young age to be more hyper aware of my surroundings. So maybe someone who does have a cochlear implant on the other side would not have to turn their head so much to localize the sounds. But I have to do that a lot of times. And, when I'm driving or when I'm in a busy street or a noisy restaurant, I just have to be hyper aware of what's going on around me. So it does take more brain power than what a bilateral hearing impaired child would take. So that's the biggest problem, I would say.
So, in these kind of tough situations where you find it difficult to hear,
Hmm.
how do you cope? Suppose someone is saying something and you're not able to hear or comprehend,
Hmm.
then what do you do?
Speaking for me now at this age, I would just ask them to repeat themselves. I would be like, I didn't quite catch that. Can you repeat yourself? Or like, what? Just friendly conversation. I'd just ask them to repeat themselves. Even in professional settings, I've done that. But from at a younger age, you're quite shy about it. So I would probably just ignore it and, try to cover up on other tracks. But now I just ask them to repeat themselves. And in extreme situations where I can't ask them to repeat themselves, I lip read.
Oh.
So that helps.
So, Ananya, can you share your journey about mainstreaming? Like how you got into mainstreaming and how was your journey in school with respect to teachers dealing with you and your friends around?
So I switched schools in class 5 and I got mainstreamed into Delhi Public School. So that was a major switch that I remember from my school days. And when I switched schools, I did not know at that time, but now you have told me, my mother, you had actually sensitized my teachers. So one day prior, my first day of school, you had gone and shown a PowerPoint presentation to all the teachers and explained them what hearing impairment is, what my device is, how it cannot get wet, how it operates on
Yeah.
batteries, all of that procedures. And you explain to them that, she might be stigmatized by the other children in the class. So maybe be a little more helpful towards her and, kind of look out for her. And then also, I used to sit on the front seats, as I mentioned. So that was very much my ritual to come in the class and sit on the front seat. So then the teachers already had an idea of what it was, and because they were more mature, they were older, so they had the cognitive ability to grasp कि ये problem क्या है
हाँ.
और इसको help करने के लिए क्या क्या steps कर सकते हैं हम.
Right.
But जो छोटे बच्चे होते हैं, they have no idea. So the teacher, before I came into class during homeroom period, they told the students that oh कि एक hearing impaired बच्चा आ रहा है class में. And at that time my teacher told my friends to not ask too many questions, do not stare, because I had a very visible
Yeah.
implant. So she told them, don't stare, don't ask questions, try to make her feel like one of your own.
Huh.
So I feel like for other families, other parents, this is something that they definitely can do without their child's knowledge. Do not tell your children you're doing this, because it will harm their confidence.
Yes.
Because it will make them feel like, oh, my parent is having to go and, talk for me. So maybe one day before they join the class, sensitize the teachers, meet the principal, do all of that. And and at home, encourage the child to answer questions. So for me, I feel like if there was one thing I could change, I probably would have walked into class and been like, introduced myself, and then been like, are there any questions you want to ask me? I can talk very clearly and all of that. And then later on, actually, people in my class did not bully me as much as people outside of my class, because they were not sensitized the same way
Correct.
as the people in my class were. So I kind of had to lean on my friends then for support. So a lot of times I would not be saying anything, but my friends would be supporting me. So if someone said something and walked away,
Huh.
then they would tell me, don't listen to them, Ananya, ye aise hi bol rahi hai, koi baat nahi. So finding those people is really important in life. So,
Yeah.
I found friends and I'm still friends with them today. Throughout
Yes.
college, we've been friends. So
Yes.
they're my second family to me. So them and even my college friends, so friends are very important, they're very crucial. So the parent should encourage the child to make friends, to
Yeah.
answer questions कि आप कोई बात नहीं, आप पूछ लो, मुझे बुरा नहीं लगेगा. So you become stronger that way.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was my integration journey. And 9-10 तक तो people are mature, हुई समझ जाते हैं बच्चे, तो फिर उसके बाद ज़्यादा problem नहीं हुई.
Okay.
But first 5th to 9th 10th, I would say, was the real time when I had to discover myself, fight for myself. There's lots of times I'm sure I would have come crying to you
Yes.
about things, but
Yeah.
that is a journey that has to happen, and teachers should be there to support the child, but
Hmm.
not overstep also.
Correct.
So it's a very nice balance that you have to have as a parent, as a teacher, even as a friend.
Right.
So I feel like if you talk about it more, it solves the problem for the child more, actually. So I feel like that's what teachers can do. and that's what friends can do and what parents can do for their children, talking, sensitizing the teachers and things. But that is from my perspective, as a child, what I would expect my parents to do. But I'm sure you also have a lot of parents that come to you and ask questions about their children, and you see yourself as a parent and then them as parents. Are
Yes.
there any differences that you have done and they don't do it, or they do it and you don't, or anything that you feel like they should be doing more?
Uh, because I'm a parent also.
Yeah.
So, being a professional, in every session I meet them,
Hmm.
I talk about developing self advocacy skills. Plus, that you have talked in detail. Where I would like to highlight upon is talk about your child with other people also.
Hmm.
Most of the time we create that shell that, oh, my child is having this issue, and if I talk to someone else, that person will not understand.
Hmm.
Whereas it should be the other way around. See, the whole idea of doing this podcast and doing this conversation is to let people know what are the possibilities,
Hmm.
that what is achievable.
Hmm.
I mean, I have my friends from those times when of your age.
Hmm.
Those children are, I'm very proud to say, they are doctors, they are CAs, they are engineers. One of them is an IPS officer now. You name a profession and they are there. And they are there because that they've gone through the journey and it works. So the young parents should feel comfortable of talking about these things in with general public as well. They should step forward and talk about it. And then this stigma of deafness, this focus on deafness will dilute, because it will be taken as okay, a situation which, when intervened on time with the
Early
correct
intervention.
knowledge and early intervention, the results can be achieved. The child can be integrated into mainstreaming. The child can be a part of this society.
So you're talking about parents of children my age who are now my age, what they have done, or are you talking about parents who come to your clinic now?
Now, when they come, I give them examples of what is achievable.
Okay.
So I tell them that these older children are in various
Fields.
fields.
Hmm.
It is achievable, so you should not feel scared. You should not be so much apprehensive about talking about this issue with other people.
Hmm.
Spread awareness,
Hmm.
talk about it, so that the acceptance becomes easier
Easier.
for the children.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one advice we give to families.
It's a lifelong commitment for a family. Like they just have to, full forward, full throttle, and kind of help the children. It's a lifelong thing.
Yes.
And the child will be all the better for it.
Yes.
The child will grow to the sky's the limit after that.
Sky is the limit. Because you name a profession, they are there.
There.
They just need to dream and think about it and
Yeah.
work towards it.
Yeah.
And family is the biggest support system.
Yes. Yes. No greater thing than family for sure.
Family, friends. So, just for the audience sake, what are you doing currently?
I just graduated from the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, in Canada last year. And
Okay.
I've been working full time since then. I was working in Vancouver and now I'm working in Toronto. So I have a full time job there.
So, you went there when you were 18. So, just
Yeah.
passing 12th, you
Yes.
went
Yeah.
for your undergrad
For my
course.
bachelor's, yes.
So, you've been living alone. The biggest question which parents ask most of the times to us is
Hmm.
that how do you wake up? Because, during the day, because of your hearing device, you have access to sounds.
Yes.
But when you take it off at night and you are asleep and you have morning classes
job.
or other commitments, how do you wake up?
So when I sleep like the dead, basically. Like you could bang pots and pans, or there could be an earthquake or anything. I will not wake up through it. So the only thing that can wake me up is not a sound, but rather a vibration.
Oh,
So I wear a watch that vibrates. It's an alarm vibrator. So it vibrates at the alarm I set it to. And that's how I wake up. Because, when you feel someone shaking your hand constantly, you have to wake up.
yeah.
So that's the only way that I have been able to wake up these past 5 years that I've been living alone now.
So, which means most of those wristbands with health,
Yeah, the fitness
fitness
bands.
bands which have vibrator,
Yeah, they're
uh,
fine. They work.
they're fine. They work well.
Yeah, but this is my personal opinion. A lot of other things are there, a lot of other technologies which work more for other people. So I have friends who have alarm clocks that vibrate, so they put it on their bed. So
Oh,
some people wear it, some have that. So it really depends person to person. But vibration is the only thing that helps.
correct.
Yeah.
Hmm. So, have you, when you live in hostel, when you are alone sleeping there, have you made a group of friends where suppose there is a fire alarm?
Hmm.
Because now with fire alarm you can't have a vibrator
Yeah.
thing to inform you. So are you mentally prepared for situations, suppose where you go for your bath? There
Hmm.
also you won't be carrying any hearing device or the vibrator alarm. How do you keep yourself safe in situations like this? Do you have any support system? Do you have any backup plan where
I am
you
someone who makes 50 backup plans. So I have plan A, B, C, D, E, whatever you call it. But it's important to have a support system in terms of people. So I have a family there. I've grown up with these people for 5 years now. So I've told them that I'm hearing impaired. This is my problem. And for the first 2 years of my university life, or maybe roughly three, I lived with a roommate. So she and I became very close. So I told her that, if there's any problem, my door would always be unlocked. So if there was a fire alarm, she would come in and wake me up and, be like, there's a fire alarm, we need to evacuate the house. Or if I've gone for a bath, I always take my phone in with me. So I've told people and my support system the protocol that if anything happens, just text me, because I'm more likely to see a text than to hear the phone ring.
yeah.
So all of these things, little things, and it's important to share your story with people so they can help you. There's no shame about it. And when I was living alone, then because I was at university in Canada, they had a lot of good accessibility options for disabled people. So I got a special apartment where the fire alarm had a light on it. So instead of making noise, it would
Oh,
flash a light. So
wow.
yeah, so when I was sleeping, it's happened a couple of times that the light would start flashing and I would wake up,
Okay.
because it feels like the apocalypse is coming when that light flashes. So you wake up. It does its job.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. And in situations like classroom situations where, there are big lecture halls,
Hmm.
so are you able to hear your professor giving lectures, and are you comfortable, or you need assistance there in the classroom?
So for me, like earlier on, I'll talk about earlier on and now so that we can have a kind of comparison. But earlier on, I was always the like first child to sit in the class in the front
Okay.
row, first
Mm-hmm.
child to be in the queue, first child to, get notes, anything. I was always sitting in the front row, because I couldn't, that at that time technology was not so developed
Right.
that it could help me to the point where if I sat out of range, maybe I could
Mm.
still hear well. So for then, my only option was to sit in the front row.
Hmm.
Now, when technology has improved, and with the nuclear sound system, and all these new cochlear implants that are coming out,
Yeah.
uh, I was able to sit on the back rows then. So
Mm.
maybe my last 3-4 years of high school, I started sitting in the back, for practice, and I honestly found no issues. And then they came out with the mini mic accessory.
Yeah.
So that translated into my college life as well, and you can just go up to your professor or your teacher and be like, can I keep this near you? And
Mm-hmm.
then you can sit wherever you like in the classroom. But personally, I've not faced any problems in university, even though I've sat in 200 people lecture halls, because this speaker system is quite nice. And if there were doubts, I could always approach the professor after class, or
Hmm.
ask him to keep the mini mic with him or her.
Nice.
Yeah.
So you mean to say now you have more options with respect to technology
Yes.
assisting devices
Yes.
where you have access to mini mics or Rogers where they help you hear the speaker's voice
Directly
directly
in your
into your
implant.
processors.
So it's like a Bluetooth system,
Yes.
but just more convenient for hearing impaired people.
Cool. So this is about the current situation.
Yes.
I want to take you back in your childhood memories.
Yeah.
And do you have any flashback memories where you feel that because you were wearing a device, you were the odd one out? You were looked up like a strange person in the class? Because now I see people wearing a lot of Bluetooth devices, and there's something cool about it.
Yeah.
Earlier, 20 years back, someone wearing something on the ear, especially because the processors were too big.
Yeah.
Now it is hiding under your hair.
Yes.
Earlier, they were so much visible. So, because of that, do you remember any instances which you want to share? How you were approached, like how you were looked upon, and how did you manage?
So the earliest memory I have of a cochlear implant was maybe when I was in nursery
Okay.
or like first grades, somewhere around that time. And as you mentioned, technology was very chunky then. It was quite bulky and chunky and very visible.
Yeah.
So I used to wear a backpack, actually, a black strap bag.
Yeah. Okay.
And I used to wear that, so everyone could see that, from teachers to children to anybody on the road could
Mm.
see why is she wearing a backpack constantly.
Yeah.
And there were like wires going to my head, so I looked more half human,
robotic.
half robot. Yeah.
Robotic.
Yeah, so
ET
I've
type.
been called that many times. I've been called a machine girl many times.
Oh.
So that's
Oh.
the earliest memory I have of a cochlear implant. And yeah, many people would come up to me and be like, what are you wearing? Why are you wearing that? Don't you feel weird? And at that time, cochlear implants were not designed to let children play sports and all of that, because it
Mhm.
was heavy, and you have like a somewhat very small child who doesn't weigh that much, just carrying a backpack. Then it moved on to the
Smaller,
Freedom. Yeah,
yes.
all of these implants came in, so they were more on the ear, but still they were skin in color and they were still very visible. You had wires, ear hooks going. So the technology changed, but the problems of the social impact did not change. So then I would say grade 6 or grade 7, I was getting water from the water cooler, and these two girls are like, oh my god, here comes the machine girl,
Oh.
So that's what I became known as,
Oh.
the girl defined by her cochlear implant.
Did you feel bad?
Yes, I felt very bad, that I've cried many times over it. But I think that was all part of the learning process that I had to undergo, no disability, not just hearing impairment, but no disability comes without bullying and stigma. So it is something that we all have to go through. Even people who are not disabled are
Yeah.
bullied. Bullying does not discriminate.
Yeah.
So it's just something, it's a rite of passage for every child, at this point. So I had to go through that, and it made me who I am today.
Mhm.
So definitely, as technology has improved and the implants have become black in color,
Yeah.
people have the option of hiding it in their hair. Even boys and girls both have the option of hiding it in their hair.
You think hiding is good?
In certain cases, yes, and in certain cases, no. Why I say yes is because not everyone is very comfortable with their disability or the visibility of their implant, and we can't force them to be okay with that. Everyone has that journey that they have to go through. Maybe after one point they'll become comfortable with it, but until they don't, we cannot force it on them. And then for some people, hiding it is not an option because they're very comfortable with it and they have no problems. And now that AirPods and all these Bluetooth devices have come out, a lot of people ask me, is that an AirPod or like some Bluetooth
Yeah.
hearing device?
Yeah.
So it's really not a problem. It depends on who you are.
So you mean to say it is more acceptable now? The stigma is not there?
I wouldn't say the stigma is not there. I would say that it is more acceptable, but the stigma is definitely still there. And, we live in a country where the population is, it has overtaken China's population. We're the number one populated country in the world. So statistically, the knowledge of hearing impairment spreading is very low because
Yeah.
we don't have educated mass. We have more uneducated mass of people than educated people. So
Or
probability of
yeah.
not knowing is greater than the probability of knowing. So that stigma never goes away, but the acceptance and the just the simple awareness among these communities is greater.
I see you calling yourself many times as deaf. Are
Yes.
you comfortable with this term deaf, to call yourself as, oh, I'm deaf? Because honestly, being a professional, we never call anyone as deaf. We are very respectful about those terms, and we say children with hearing differences, or children with a hearing loss, child with a hearing loss. So we are very mindful about how we address. But I see in your talks you call yourself deaf. Are you okay if someone calls you deaf, or
I'm very okay with it. So there are two sides to, this community, even in professionals, like how you guys have labels for us, hearing differences, hearing impaired.
yeah?
For me, I'm okay being called deaf because I belong to that side that is like, there's no need to sugarcoat the truth. And if I accept I'm deaf, then maybe other people will start becoming more comfortable with the word itself and try to see what they can. Then the focus will not be on the word, but on how they can help us.
Yeah.
Because people focus so much on the word deaf, okay, then they start associating it with, oh, is she dumb? Is she mute? Is she not
Yeah.
able to function in society? So I would rather take the focus away from the word and rather on how they can help me or how I can help them. But there are people who I know who are my age, are hearing impaired, and they don't like the term deaf. So it's a very personal scale that
Right.
exists. Either you like it or you don't.
So when you say people of your age and your kind of impairment, so are you in touch with other young adults also, where you discuss all these things? Do you have any circle like that?
Yes, so in back in 2015-16, I attended a conference and I realized I met a lot of my friends there. But I
Okay.
realized I've met these people through my mother. Like I've met these people through you because you knew their parents.
Yeah.
So that was the only connection we had. So post that conference, I created a WhatsApp group. I took their numbers and I created a WhatsApp group. And at that time, we were just 10 people. And, a couple of those people were people like me, the first children in North India to get implanted. So we were already familiar with each
Yeah.
other. Now the group has grown to over 50 children and ranging from the ages of 16 to 25, 26 maybe, and no parents allowed on that group. So it's just a
Yeah,
community.
somewhere, thank God, the parents are not there.
I mean, not like that we hate parents or anything, but it
Yeah.
is a safe space for people
Correct.
who can talk to other people, because even our parents cannot understand our issues sometimes.
Correct.
Only people who are in the exact same situation as you can understand. So it gives a nice listening ear to people who want to talk on that group.
So you have interesting chats on those? Are you discussing boyfriend, girlfriends, or
Some
how,
people do ask
some tips on dating, all
advice.
that? You
Yeah,
do?
some people do ask dating advice, but not in terms of like, oh, where do I go on a date or anything like that. But
Huh.
just how do I bring up this conversation with someone I like? How do I tell them I'm hearing impaired? I have to take it off when I sleep.
Huh.
And I can't go out in the rain without taking proper measures. I can't swim without taking proper measures, aqua accessories and all
Yeah.
of that. So it's mostly about that. How do we get society to accept us? And it's a little sad that we still have to talk about this. It should just be unsaid that, it doesn't matter. So yeah, people do, when someone likes someone, they, come to the group and be like, how should I ask this person what to say? And, basically just that.
Wow, that's cool. That sounds interesting, because as you said, children above 16, so
Yeah.
mainly teenagers and young adults in that group.
Yeah.
Any other conversation you had in that group which you feel we as parents should know and be aware that, maybe we are missing out in developing those advocacy skills where, they feel they are not being told about, or you think?
I think parents tend to become helicopter parents, just hovering over the child, keeping them in a bubble. So when these kids actually discuss There are problems with us in terms of bullying. Someone was
Okay.
facing problems, someone was facing trouble with troubleshooting their implant at school.
Okay.
So, they just send a quick text on the group, I'm facing this problem. What do you guys think I should do? Someone's
Uh-huh.
like, I'm very sad because someone said this to me.
Huh.
So, parents tend to try to prevent that. But the truth is that when they come and they talk to us, they actually feel better after talking about it.
Yeah.
Because, they're like, okay, someone listened to me, and we tell them to accept the fact that they have to go through this. You
Mhm.
cannot avoid it. So that's what I keep telling to parents, that you cannot avoid a child getting bullied. You have to let them go through it. And then if they need help, they will come to you. That's the kind of relationship that needs to be fostered. If they need help, they will come to you and talk to you about it. But you
Right.
can't force them to be in a bubble. You can't choose their friends for them. You can't choose
Hmm.
the resources
Hmm.
for them. So the best thing is to let them be and kind of learn self-advocacy on their own.
I've also know as a fact that you gave a TEDx talk also on the
Impact.
social impact on ableism.
Yes.
Can you explain what is it about and what do you mean by this term? Because that's a new term for me as well.
Right. So ableism means so we have two communities, right? The abled community and the disabled community. I say things as it is.
Huh.
So it's the abled community and the disabled community. So what I find is that the abled community has been making decisions for the disabled community for a very long time now. So there is a social impact of ableism. People are more inclined to help able people than disabled people, more inclined to listen to able people than disabled people, even if it is about a disabled issue. So,
No, now I am confused. So let's go step by step. Where you say people who do not have disability make decisions for people who have disability,
yes,
any kind of.
yes.
So how does that?
For
Is it?
example,
Huh.
let's talk about the labels that you were saying, deaf labels and all of that. That is not something that we decided. It is somebody who was fully hearing, fully able, who said, oh, this person is deaf.
Okay.
They decided that label. We did not decide it. So in my TEDx talk, I delve deep into the difference between the global north and the global south. So the global north is the developed countries, because I've lived in the global north for almost 5 years now.
Yeah.
I know what that environment is like. And there is a very big difference between the global north and the global south. The global south is the developing countries in which India falls. I've lived here for 18 years. So I was able to see that disparity and talk about that in my TED Talk. So I touched on these differences. And the biggest difference I could see was that in terms of representation. So again, when it comes to ableism, when you look at representatives for disabled people, they are also able people in most cases.
Okay.
If you do a Google search of hearing impaired people or deaf people, it's mostly old white men and women who show up in the
Images.
There
Yeah.
are
Correct.
no children, people of color, women. That's just a lower probability of seeing it.
Yeah.
So it shows that able people aren't deciding things, because if we were deciding all of these things, our representation would have definitely been more.
Correct.
In governmental structures, in cabinets, there are mostly when disabled people are represented, they do not represent the entire disabled community, and in most cases that's not possible to have a person from each
disability.
disability. But it is important to have qualified people who may have general knowledge of each facet, what disabled people from one community might require, what people from one community might require. So for example, the buses in Vancouver all have reclining ramps for wheelchair people to get on.
Yeah.
And for people with invisible disabilities. So that means you can't see the disability. So some people might have vertigo, or some people might have disabilities where they can't stand for too long. They have seats that are for them and buttons that say that please offer me a seat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So none of that is in India. We don't even have a social welfare budget that compares to the social welfare budget of the global north.
Correct.
So we need to bridge that gap, and we need to have a social welfare budget in the government, so that if anything, the government can help. It may not be at the grassroots level, but if we start looking at big organizations do it, smaller organizations are bound to follow.
Correct.
So I mainly talked about that.
That's a very deep thought and deep
Heavy topic.
heavy topic to,
Hmm.
come up with and discuss that on an open platform.
Hmm.
So coming back, so when we are comparing, so let's keep it very simple.
Hmm.
When you said you were here in India for 18 years and
Yes.
people came up and they said, "What are you wearing?" And you said, "This is a cochlear implant." What was their answer?
आप बोलते भी हो? That was the most common question. Can you talk?
Yeah. And now when you went there, and I remember one of your friends asked, "What are you so they didn't ask you, and you yourself said that you are wearing a cochlear implant. What
When-
was that?
So she asked me, is that a hearing device?
Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's a cochlear implant. And she said, oh, that's so cool. Even one of my friends in high school had it. So what cochlear implant is it? And then she started asking me about my story. She never asked if I could hear properly or talk or if I could comprehend things perfectly. She just asked me, oh, what device I'm wearing it. She related it to a friend who had it in her high school. So that was
So this shows the kind of awareness in the society we
Yes.
have for what is available now, what can be achievable now with these implantable technologies, and the kind of awareness they have there. They for them it's like, okay, sure, it's nothing big deal. Yeah, we know that.
Yeah, and they're more nonchalant about the whole thing. And I believe a big part is faith in science. Western technology has always been big on technology and medicine. Indian society has been more on spiritualism. I'm sure you see a lot of parents now who are scared of this technology and don't want to get their children cochlear implanted. They rather, do some rituals and, pray to their gods before they finally put their hands up and say, okay, let's go for the cochlear implant. I'm sure you see it.
Yes,
Yeah.
I do.
So I feel like faith in science is a very big difference as well.
Yes. Because earlier I remember when you got your cochlear implant, you are amongst the first 10 pediatric cases in India. So we had no child to see. We had no one to understand how it looks like, how does a child wears a cochlear implant, what are the reactions after wearing. We had nothing to see. So it was a very big decision for us to go for it, to go for this technology.
What made you decide to take the cochlear implant if you had no clue? Because now parents have examples.
Yes.
When you had no examples, what made you have faith in science?
So again, I went abroad. I would say the mother institute of all, the John Tracy Clinic in LA in US. I was invited to be a part of their parent workshop.
Okay.
So they have an outreach program where they invite families from across the globe to do these summer programs where they educate parents about on various subjects, that how to work with your young deaf child. So there I saw couple of children wearing cochlear implant.
Okay.
And the kind of reactions those children were giving, suppose they were called by their name with a distance, and they quickly turned their head. Whereas when you were on hearing aids and I'm calling your name, I have to be very loud. I have to come closer. So I could immediately feel the difference between the reactions when a child is hearing with hearing aid and when versus the child with cochlear
implants.
That moment was enough for me to believe in the technology. And once when we came back and you got your implant, everybody was welcomed at our place to see what it is, and then a lot of implants happened after that, and it gave a start. So seeing those reactions make you understand the benefits of
so it's important to have examples.
It does help. Because just seeing or reading a literature about it and not knowing the consequences or seeing the outcome, you can't have full faith in technology. unless you experience it
Yeah.
yourself by seeing and the live examples.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now, coming back to the end of the wonderful conversation we are going on, when you meet families of these young children, what kind of advice would you like to give to the parents? Because children are too young.
Yeah, they are too young to
To,
listen to some
yeah, they need
random
to play.
woman. Yeah.
So, what kind of conversations you do with them? Any piece of advice you give them, or
I've met maybe over 100 families at this point, and being there also at university, I've met so many other children with cochlear implants at my university because they have a center for disability
right?
and accessibility there within
Mm.
the university.
Okay.
So I met a lot of parents there as well, who were waiting for their children to get registered or whatever.
Mm.
So I feel like the most common theme that run amongst all these parents is bullying. Everyone comes up to me
Oh.
and is like, oh, because with disability, the parents themselves have certain stereotypes about their children. So if the parents have it, why won't outside society have it? So they come to me with that mindset that, okay, my child has a visible disability, maybe does not have clear speech right now,
Yeah.
so they panic because these kind of results are not achievable within 3 months, 4 months. It takes years and years of therapy. And
Yeah.
for parents, it's lifelong therapy.
Yeah.
So they are always like, oh, our child will get bullied or is not able to talk right now. What should we do? Give us like a easy fix right now for it.
Huh.
So what I say is that you have to have faith, and time is always on your side. With time, these things get better. So you need to be patient, have faith, and let it play out. If your child is getting bullied, the best thing you can do is become a best friend to your child. You can teach them tactics and strategies to help them defend themselves. But you can't fight that fight for them. And a lot of parents want to do that. They want to take their child's pain and make it their own. But you can't do that in life for anybody. So with disabled children or able children, they have to fight these fights on their own. So let them teach them self-advocacy skills, act happy, be happy around them, have faith. That's the only thing you can do. And they'll thank you. And I've mentioned this to parents that they will thank you years down the line. They will come to you and they say, thank you for letting me exist. That's all I needed. That support and that love, that's all they needed. So like I've thanked you for what you've done, I'm sure a lot of kids also do that. So you just need to have patience until that moment comes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So which means keep working towards the goal, develop self-advocacy skills,
Yes.
and have faith.
And have faith in your professionals. I forgot to mention that. There's no better people than your qualified professionals to help you. If they're telling you to do something, do it. Blindly do it because they know best.
Yeah.
And they have a connectivity within their own field. They know other people in their own field, so they know what they're doing. It's not like they're just randomly helping people.
Yeah.
They're helping people with the knowledge. So blindly follow your professionals. They will help your children. Your children are their children.
Yeah.
So
True.
Have faith in professionals as well.
So where do you see yourself 10 years down the line?
I have no idea. Life is an adventure for me. I'm doing different things at different times. I'm always trying to learn new things and growing. I don't know what tomorrow is going to look like, but each day I try to do the best I can.
So thank you so much for being in conversation, though informal, where you talked about your heart out and you shared your journey.
Yeah.
I'm sure with this first episode, the viewers would have got the taste of what we are going to do in our future series. And keeping fingers crossed, I'm sure we are going to cover up many more other disabilities as well in the conversation with various professionals, parents, and achievers.
Right.
So, with that note, thank you so much.
Thank you
for being here and giving a start to it.
Thank you so much for having me. I gave more of a personal experience, and I'm sure someone will be able to provide a professional viewpoint on it and take it even further.
Okay, thank you, and I shall see you in the next episode.